Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Elfrank, the head of marketing over here at Empire Flippers. And today I am speaking with Eric and David over at Agency Elevation. I don't know why I keep reversing the name of the agency in my head, but it is what it is. But they're a really cool white label marketing agency. And I brought them on specifically because I was just genuinely impressed. I heard them on another podcast, I think a few podcasts at this point, and I'm just researching around, and they're one of the few white label agencies where I feel like these guys seem legitimate. They seem like they really know what they're doing, what they're talking about. And I didn't realize this when we started, but they've worked with some really big agencies at this point. So this is a really cool story. Really cool. They answer a bunch of different questions about how to run a successful agency, whether it's a local agency, e-commerce agency, you name it. And it's just a great talk. Unfortunately, they had to run to another meeting because otherwise I could have asked tons of different questions. I would have loved to get deeper into how they organize their own business in terms of staffing, which we do a little bit at the end. But if you are an agency owner, this is a fantastic podcast for you because these guys can come in absolutely clutch for you if you are looking to expand your services. So enough of me rattling on. Let's get into the meat of the podcast. I'll see you on the other side. All right, I got Eric and David with me here of a pretty cool white label agency. So, for my audience out there, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you guys are in the world and a bit about the agency.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm David. I'm a co-founder of Agency Elevation. I'm up in Appleton, Wisconsin area, so northeast part of Wisconsin, northern part of the United States, and we do white label. I've been doing that for quite a few years, and my background is heavily rooted in SEO and working in agencies and scaling many agencies that were acquired. Played many roles as an SEO specialist, grinding my way up the ranks. Almost 20 years ago when I started to eventually becoming an SEO director and then a marketing director. And Eric and I crossed paths through one of those agencies many years ago. And we decided to start our own agency. And with our agency experience, the white label part just made a lot of sense. And so we do the fulfillment for other agencies on the back end. And that kind of led us to where we are today.
And Eric
Right. Yeah.
is
To add on, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As David mentioned, I'm his partner and fellow co-founder. We do white label SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, some other various white label ads related things as well, like LinkedIn, a little bit of Reddit, Twitter, stuff like that. I technically oversee the ad side of the company, and David oversees the SEO side. But we have leadership teams built out that and teams that run the day to day. But as David alluded to, his background's in SEO and mine's in ads, so it was a good partnership for he and I many years ago now, and the rest has been history.
That's interesting. So, why did you guys choose to do white label instead of a more traditional client facing agency? What was it about white label that drew your attention?
So it's kind of we never intentionally meant to get into white label, which is the funny part. It's kind of a cool story. Just being in the agency space for my whole career, I built up a lot of contacts, relationships, and kind of just a big network of other people that are obviously in the agency space. And that's obviously where I met Eric. And so we actually did have our own retail, client facing agency. And we kept getting requests from other agencies like, hey, man, I don't know how you do it, but can you help us with these clients? Because we can't find a good SEO guy, or I can't find a good Google ads guy, or, we have nobody to run Facebook ads. Can you help us? And so the white label part just kind of took off on its own through basic supply and demand. Like the demand was there. And I was just like, well, I'm good at SEO and I know how to make it scale for agencies. And so I was able to help a lot of these agency owners. And then they were like, hey, you need to be doing paid ads too. And I'm like, oh, well, I happen to know the best guy at that. And it just was a natural fit for Eric and I to do that together. And we never intended to do that. It kind of landed in our laps and we ran with it. And it's been obviously the best decision we've ever made.
Wow, that's awesome. I was telling Eric this before you got to join with the technical difficulties that we had. I was telling Eric, you guys stand out to me pretty hard because most of the white label agencies I see kind of have this fly by night feeling to it, where it's just I don't know if I even trust to fill out my credit card with these guys. But you guys seem much more on the up and up. And I was listening to one of your guys' podcasts that you were on with someone else, which I think is how I found you guys. And one of the more unique things you guys are doing is you're 100% USA based. So you're not using any outsourcing or offshore talent rather. Why did you choose that decision? Because I find that very strange, especially for a white label agency where I would think the margins are so much thinner.
Yeah, so we could definitely, have a team that's much larger if we went offshore, but really it comes down to quality. So we've tested it. We tried it years and years ago. We had a team. We actually had an office in India at one point many years ago. We tried it and it was just a nightmare from it's not that the talent is not good over there. They're great people. They're very hard workers, but there's a communication barrier. There's a cultural barrier, and then there's a time zone barrier. And it really just boiled down to, hey, everybody's offshoring this work and outsourcing it. Let's do something different. Let's be better. First off, we wanted to build American jobs, right? We're from here, so that's important to us. And secondly, we wanted to really give kind of a differentiating factor and approach to us, which is we're higher quality. So it's USA work, USA talent on during USA hours, during business hours. And then we took it a step further and we integrate directly with the agencies through Slack. And so during business hours, they can ping their specialists and get responses within minutes. So instead of sending this over to a ticket system overseas that you hear back in a day or two, or some guy who doesn't even know anything about your account, you're getting the actual person in the ad account or on the SEO campaign to respond to you within minutes during business hours. And that's been critical and crucial to our long-term partnerships with all of our agency owners that we partner with.
Yeah, that makes sense. The time zone issue I can definitely relate to. My team is global. So, like on my marketing team, I have a person from South Africa, people in California, people in Britain, and often they're doing the digital nomad thing. So, like, they might be there one week and then they're in Brazil. So, like, the time zone I got used to is totally changed. So, I feel your
Yeah.
pain on the time zone issue for sure.
Even internally, we have guys that are in California and guys that are in Pennsylvania. Just that 3 hour gap from West Coast to East Coast can be a pain. Now you take an 8, 10, 11, 12 hour time zone gap, and it's very difficult to get that to align, especially with client meetings and deadlines, and they need this by this date.
Mhm.
And so that's what we found just worked good for us. And it seems to be a differentiator as well. Like you said, it kind of stands out that's what's different about working with us as opposed to a lot of the other competitors in our space.
So you mentioned integration with Slack. So I think that's cool that you're integrating with the agencies, but how deep do you go? So some of my agency friends, they'll use a software like Go High Level is one I only recently found out about, but I'm pretty impressed by. But is your team like integrating full on into the tech stack of that agency? Or are you just in Slack and running the ads or the SEO? Like how deep are you guys integrating with these agencies?
Yeah, so we go pretty deep. Obviously, it depends on the scale and level to which we're partnering with an agency. Some agencies we're kind of surface level because we're only doing this little piece or that little piece. And then we have agencies where we do everything. So our team is commonly in Go High Level for a lot of agencies. The bulk of our agencies use Go High Level because it's, a really great tool for scaling and building an agency. We're in Shopify and WordPress and Slack, Go High Level, Zapier, things like that. We're in all these tools to help troubleshoot, fix things. If they have landing pages, that means we might be in ClickFunnels or Unbounce or, there's so many different tools, and we actually will integrate into all of them as needed per, whatever we're fulfilling on for our partners.
That is so wild to me because when I look at most agency owners, they always preach you should niche down to one niche, one service. And you guys are like, yeah, we serve one niche, which happens to serve like every niche. So that seems like, how do you keep all of this together, like you and Eric? Because not only are you doing SEO, but you're doing Facebook ads, TikTok ads. I think, Eric, you mentioned Reddit as well. Like, this is a lot of services. Like, how do you guys kind of manage this madness to maintain high quality?
So the bulk of it is SEO, Google and Facebook ads, right? We've just until recently, and this ebbs and flows, with clients that we acquire, but throughout the history of our company, we've pretty much been almost on the dot 50% SEO in terms of, a portion of our revenue and 50% ads. So we've just had this healthy balance. And the Google and Facebook ads on the ad side are just prominent because that's what everyone does, right? When I mentioned like Reddit and Twitter and LinkedIn and other things, they're just more supplementary, like fringe, an agency here and there will ask for them and we'll service them. But the bulk of it is across those big three. And how do we keep things in check and with quality? Kind of back to what I mentioned earlier about how we've divided up the company, right? In the very early days, when it was just David and I and a few other employees, it was, David over the SEO side, me over the ad side. And I didn't really have much to do with SEO. He didn't really have much to do with ads. So now again, that we're now near 100 employees, so that's taken off to where we have all these tons of team members doing tons of things, but we've continued to operate that way. So, I mean, everyone within our company too is a specialist at what they do. So they only do one thing. We don't employ any generalists. We don't have a guy doing SEO who's like moonlighting doing Google ads on the side at night. Like even within SEO, we have people who just build links, people who just do content, people who just optimize GBPs. We have developers who do, technical type stuff. So that would be the answer to how we've maintained and scaled with quality, is just hyper focuses sort of under the hood in terms of how we go about all this. And you mentioned like different niches. I mean, we've seen them all, I'd like to think by now, but like one of the things when you've done this long enough, you realize that just in terms of like the foundational sort of core components to a successful marketing campaign, there's a lot of synergy no matter what the industry is. Like if you're running ads or doing SEO for a chiropractor or a plumber, yes, they're very different industries, but at the end of the day, they're still local service oriented businesses that are trying to acquire leads. So like, there's a lot of similar things you're doing. And then, where there are differences, especially in more of the complex industries and things that we see at times, some of the B2B or national type stuff, because of how many years we've been doing this and how many team members we have, we've just built out expertises even within the company in certain niches. So say we get, some kind of SaaS offering for ads. We have individuals on the ad side that have worked with SaaS. And so we can just steer them there, right? So we're just kind of able to slice and dice. And no matter at this point what an agency needs, I feel like we're able to fulfill on it as well as anybody can.
Yeah, that's cool. I think one of the most interesting and unique things of agencies is also something I kind of get as well from a different perspective, which is like just so much exposure to different businesses. And you start seeing these patterns, right? Like you mentioned the plumber and the chiropractor, like the fundamentals are the same. So in terms of your guys' agency, you mentioned a few different business models, I guess I should say. Where is the bulk of your clients? Is it the local lead gen? Is it the e-commerce store? Is it B2B SaaS? Like, where is your guys' kind of sweet spot with the white label agency?
It's
Go ahead,
most,
Eric.
oh, Dave, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's mostly local lead gen, but kind of like how we didn't seek out white label, we didn't seek out local lead gen. It just seems like that's what most agencies serve. You kind of hit on it a little bit ago. Like most trainings and things, people are told, right? Pick a niche. Normally that ends up being some kind of local service oriented thing.
Mhm.
But we're equipped and do a lot of work in everything from local lead gen, B2B, SaaS. We do a lot of e-com. We work with a lot of agencies who have like, coaching type individuals who are trying to get coaching clients. So you name it, we do a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, most of it's local service oriented stuff. And I always kind of categorize that in like three buckets. So like health and wellness, which would be like chiropractic, dental, orthodontic, surgeons, cryotherapy, med spas, stuff like that. And then home services, this is in no particular order: home services, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, pressure washing, landscaping, whatever. And then professional services, so attorneys, legal, insurance, real estate. Those are usually the three big like local categories, I would say.
So if an agency owner comes to you, let's just say they're a local, since you guys do a lot with local, but they come to you, they want to outsource to you guys. What's the normal process? Are you guys getting agencies that have a lot of clients that they just need help with? Or are you serving more agencies that are like, hey, I'm just starting out, I'm hitting the phones, I'm cold calling, I need someone to fulfill while I'm doing all this crazy stuff? Like, what's kind of the type of agency that comes to you? What's the process?
So they're kind of all over the place, to be honest. So what's a little different about us too, I'll just kind of caveat this. So we have $1,000 a month minimum to partner with us. So what's a little different is, there's a lot of white label providers that what they do is they're specifically working with anybody, right? So a lot of agency owners, they get one client and then they need a white label fulfillment help because they need help now fulfilling for one client. We don't typically take on agencies that only have one account. So they got to meet our minimum to be able to partner with us.
Mhm.
That allows us, because we kind of work at scale, right? Like our pricing model is pretty competitive for USA talent. And
Yes.
so we can't just like take on
Yes.
we can't just take on one account and then we lose out on that very quickly because it gets just way out of scope and things like that. So those that are coming to us are typically those that have between 5 and 10 accounts. And then up to, I mean, we do enterprise white label. So we have agencies with us that have 700 plus accounts with us.
Wow.
So we do very, very, we have agencies that are doing $20-30 million a year in revenue, and we're doing fulfillment for all of certain pieces, parts of others, et cetera, depending on whatever their needs are. And so they're coming to us with a few things. This is how it usually happens. They had a rock star in-house employee, and then they quit. They found a better job that paid more, and now all of a sudden they can't fulfill their client campaigns and they need help. And then we go through this process and we're able to slot in for them right away and save the day, and then they stay with us because they're very happy with how it feels long term. Others are starting to scale, like that 5-10 client mark, and they're at the point where they need to hire somebody and they're kind of weighing their options. And so then they feel us out and say, hey, what can you guys offer and do in that area? And then the other side is enterprise, where they maybe are really good at certain things and they need to just add on some pieces, or they need some support here. And they're like, hey, can you guys help us with that? And we're like, sure, we can. So then we explore what that looks like. And if it makes sense, we hit the go button. And then that's kind of the range of agencies I think we get, unless I missed anything, Eric, there you wanted to add to.
No, that's spot on. I think the key is just us helping them scale to big heights, though, right? Like that's our goal. That's why we try to do what we do. And we've proven that, a million times over. Someone coming in with 5 or 10, like David said, and then the next thing, they have 40, 50, 60, 70. That's our setup. It's not meant to be a Band-Aid or help, or like David mentioned, a key employee leaves. Like we're not meant to just help you get through the time your employee is gone until you can hire someone else, right? Like with all of our resources and team members and SOPs and processes and quick turnarounds and all of that, it's a long-term solution meant to scale, which is another thing I think that's kind of different. You mentioned at the top of the call, Greg, about just perceptions of white label. A lot of people, I feel like, think of it as just like using it when you need it kind of thing, but that we've turned that upside down. If that thought has existed, as we have completely displaced, internal market, and not even just someone leaving, like David mentioned. We've had instances where large agencies have let their whole marketing department go, like everybody. And there's a new sheriff in town. Agency elevation starts on Monday. We've had that. So, but yeah, whatever. From 1,000 all the way up, and I think if you only are at the $1,000 a month minimum, you have few clients, to be able to get in with us. And even though you're not communicating with other clients, you don't even know who they are, right? We're protecting that through the white label arrangement of it. You're still indirectly rubbing shoulders with these $20 to $30 million agencies if you're partnered with us, even at $1,000, because we know what's going on. Meaning we know everything that's going on in the world of ads. We know what's working. We know what's not. Another big benefit compared to in-house, where you're just really siloed off. So yeah, all over the spectrum. But the key is just, growth focused agencies. We really, as much as we're vetted when someone would want to try to sign up with us, we really try to do that as well back on them, because David and I are very motivated. Our company's motivated. We want to be associated with agency owners who are trying to push the envelope.
Yeah. I like that David brought up the critical employee missing. I gave a speech, I think it was like 3-4 years ago now, in Sydney, Australia, in front of a bunch of agency owners. And I was talking about the dream of the agency, right? You think everything is going to be this perfect retainer, recurring revenue. And then the reality sets in, how shitty the dream can be when your key employee leaves to go start their own agency. And then they think they're like, oh man, this is going to be perfect. And then their key employee leaves. It's like this vicious cycle, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the weaknesses of an agency, right? You have not just an agency, any small business, you have a very thin talent bench usually. But you guys have 100 people. You guys, that's wild considering, what you guys are doing. Like, how do the numbers fall to like hit that scale that you need? Because you're all US employees. I'm assuming like 5-10 accounts, you guys start kind of breaking even, or start seeing profits, something like that.
Yeah, so it's funny. We internally are always going over these numbers, because we're doing well as a company, we're profitable, we run very lean, we try not to overhire, things like that. But, we've had explosive growth over the last 3-4 years. So we've just had to rapidly hire. And then, as that happens, it can get easy to lose track of margins and things like that. And so we always have these internal discussions of, hey, we need to kind of sit down and let's relook at this to make sure that things are still, where they're supposed to be, or that the margins are landing on where they need to be. And what's interesting about it is just that the margins, they definitely need to be at scale. But where we lose a little bit is like on the SEO, for example, we don't charge setup fees, which is something that's pretty unique. There's a lot of white label providers that charge setup fees. So month one of doing an SEO campaign, we might have an extra 10, 12 hours of onboarding work that's not going to be there for the monthly work. The monthly is separate, but we don't differentiate it. So month one, we do the setup and we do the monthly work. So we actually lose money on an SEO campaign in months 1 and sometimes months 2, no matter how
like a true SEO.
yeah, like a true SEO. Now we've had this internal debate 100 times. Should we charge setup fees? But you know what? It's prohibitive to the agency owner for us to do that because they're not always charging setup fees or that they're not accounting for that cost. So we've
Mhm.
just chosen to make sure that we vet good agencies so that they're truly going to be with us for at least a chunk of time. And then we make it up in the long run and at volume. And so we've just had to make that decision. And we said, you know what, we're okay doing that because it helps out the agency owner instead of trying to nickel and dime them and then they got to nickel and dime their customer to recoup that. We're able to offer them a solution. And honestly, when we meet with a lot of agencies, they're shocked that we don't charge setup fees, but they love that because they don't do it either because it's hard to do both. It's hard to get a
Yeah.
monthly fee up front and a setup fee. And so we've just said, hey, long term, and it's worked out great for us. Like, sure, while that first month or two we're upside down on those accounts, we're confident we're going to be the long term partner for them. And it just works out in the long run. So for us, it was trial and error, though, just many years of tweaking pricing, tweaking the minimum, tweaking how many clients. And we made a lot of errors where we lost our butts on many times years ago. And you learn, you get better, you learn, you get better. And so it's just a constant innovation and improvement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember when I think I was like 20, I sold this thing to this insurance agency on relationship marketing using like custom made postcards. And I thought I was brilliant, man. I sold this thing for $5,000. I did it all in 30 minutes in front of this room. Like, man, I just made 5 grand in an hour. I'm brilliant. I'm like the next Elon Musk over here. And I do the work and like months drag on by. I barely have money in my gasoline tank to like even get to the office. And the insurance guy, he told me I knew it would end up like this. Like, what? Like, that you priced yourself too low. I knew it. All this work you're doing for me is like pennies on the dollars, like minimum wage. Like, oh, you bastard. He's like, let that be a good business lesson to you. Him and I are still friends. A really funny guy, but the pricing is so key on so much of the service business. Speaking of SEO, because I agree, selling a setup fee is really hard. I would imagine you guys might disagree with me, but I would think selling SEO is one of the harder services to sell at first. So when an agency is going about getting their clients with your different core services, is there usually like a kind of a tier list of priorities you guys recommend? Like, okay, let's do Google Ads first, and that'll get the ball rolling or get some people in to then upsell them on the SEO. Like, what's the usual flow that you recommend for people selling these services?
Yeah, this is a good question. So we don't really recommend either way, like we don't force it or recommend one way or the other. Our agencies kind of dictate how they sell already because a lot of these agencies are already established or they're proven, right? It's not like they're selling their first account. They've already sold a bunch of accounts. Some offer like SEO as a base, and then they try to add on Google ads or Facebook ads later. And then vice versa. We have agencies where they only sell Facebook ads. And then we've talked them into adding on Google ads because we're like, it's low hanging fruit for you to add another service. We'll fulfill on it for you. So it's not like you have any out of pocket expenses. And you're only paying us if you signed up a client. And then we try to add on SEO for them. So we do have a lot of agencies that only sell one product or service. And then we try to talk them into that as we work with them a little bit and kind of establish it. We do also have a lot of agencies where they're SEO only and then they try to add on ads later. The nice thing about ads is that you can kind of get instant leads coming in. So if you can get Facebook or Google ads churning right away, churning results, I mean, not churning in a bad way.
Let me
Then
ruin business.
yeah, yeah, bad word choice by me there. If you can get Google or Facebook ads rolling to start pumping out leads right away, it's great because those clients are going to start to get something immediately to sink their teeth into. It's like when you go out to eat and you're waiting for the food to come and they give you, like some appetizer or something, some bread. It's like that's a great way to get them on something so they feel value. Whereas SEO, you're not going to get SEO leads like the first 2 weeks. So it's hard for agencies to sell that with the right expectations. So we don't force it. We support whatever they do, but we do go back to agencies proactively and we try to encourage them to offer more services. And this works all the time. I mean, we have a very large client in the fitness gym space, hundreds and hundreds of accounts with us, and they only did Facebook ads. We're like, hey, you should do Google ads. Now they're doing that. Hey, you should do SEO. Now they want to branch out and do Reddit and other things. And so the point of that is like, we're always trying to give them ways so that they can increase revenue and grow. But it's a win-win for us because obviously if they do add it on, it's more services that we can sell and offer too.
Yeah, I love that. And the fact that you have built out, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but I really love the fact that you guys have your pricing so transparently on your agency website. any of the listeners, I highly recommend just go check it out, because I feel like too many agencies like, oh, what do you charge? Like, well, why don't you get on this 2 hour call with me first? Like, what is like the estimate? Like, no, 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 let's go through this funnel first. I see the same thing with B2B SaaS. Where like, I just want to like check out the product, man. I don't want to have this sales demo call that like I don't know if I'm interested yet. So I like that you guys do that. Was that something you guys fought on, like back and forth on whether to be transparent with the pricing or not? Because like I think Eric, you might have mentioned this at the beginning, like the scope creep on agency services can get quite wild, right? So like, how did you guys settle on those prices?
Well, first on showing them, no, David and I have always agreed on showing them since the beginning. Like you mentioned too earlier in the call, kind of the fly by night feel a lot of other white label companies can give off. This has been another thing I think we've done that separated us from that, right? Like we're just straight shooters. We don't have anything to hide. Go on our website, look at our pricing. David and I, our photos are on there. You can see who owns the company. I mean, a lot of other white label providers, you have no idea who owns it. Good luck
Yeah.
finding the ownership. Good luck finding the country it's located in. So, we've been out on the front lines on this from the beginning. And to an earlier comment too on pricing, no setup fees for ads either. I know David was talking SEO, but we don't have any setup fees
Mhm.
there either, which can put us underwater sometimes in month one too, as we go through strategy sessions and getting conversion tracking figured out and all of that. So another thing we've just done to keep things simple for the agency is just standardization across the board. I mean, SEO and ads are different, but we try to run them as similarly as we can. But yeah, so pricing on the site, how do we decide on pricing? That's just been like probably any other business, a work in progress over the years. We have it pretty well dialed in with what you see there now. It gets trickier at significant volume, like particularly on the ad side. Well, I mean, on the ad side, if you're talking hundreds of accounts, we're getting into custom rates, margins and things that work for the agency. So that's usually just more of a discussion. And with the really large agencies too, deliverables can look different because like I think David covered, like many come in with having certain things already set up. So it's like they maybe need us for X, but not Y kind of thing. And then for SEO on that same note, we do a lot of custom packaging. So you'll see pricing on our website for SEO. Many agencies, though, have more customer specific needs than just fitting into one of the boxes we show on our website for SEO. And so we accommodate that. But yeah, I mean, the pricing, though, from a standard sense, is what you see. No hidden costs, no hidden fees, no setup stuff as we covered. So it's worked well for us. And I appreciate you liking that. We get a lot of good feedback about that. We probably miss out on, I'm not probably, we definitely miss out on leads, I'm sure, not collecting an email address to view it, but it's worked out. We're just confident. We think you'll like what you see on our website. If you want to work with us, you'll get in touch. If you don't, you're lost.
I personally love it. There's another agency guy. I don't know if you guys know him or not. I think I might have asked you if you knew him, David, but my buddy Jeff Miller, he runs client getting ads as part of his agency, like client acquisition strategy. And he'll just put the price like in the ad versus a lot of these other guys I see, they're doing this like insane double offer reversal guarantee. Like, you won't believe what is going to happen. I'm going to like cure your cancer on day 5. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
like, this is why you have no clients after like 30 days, because you're just like doing this insane promise rather than just straight up telling people. And I feel the direct approach in a sea of all these like 100% guarantees, it just really stands out, and I think it's refreshing. So it's cool seeing you guys doing it. Speaking of that, I don't know, I think it was on the same podcast I listened to you guys on, but you guys actually run client getting ads for agencies, don't you?
We
Yeah, I
do.
was trying to get off mute. We do. We ask though that you at least have like white labeled client accounts with us in place first, or in
Mhm.
conjunction. Sometimes if agencies reach out who don't want to, maybe they don't have. Often if they don't have any client accounts and they're like, I'm trying to start my agency. Can you run ads and get me clients? I'll pay you 1,000 a month minimum. It's like, we want to first and foremost be able to service what we do, which is the white
Right.
label client work. But absolutely, we love to help with the agency ads. We do a lot of agency SEO too, just as much, if not more. And it's a win-win. I mean, the nice thing about white label is that we have the same interests, right? We want the agency to get clients. We want the ads for them to produce clients. We want the SEO to work because if they're using us for fulfillment, we're getting it on the back end. So yeah, and it's, for all the same reasons I mentioned, it makes sense with us with client accounts. We see a lot with agency accounts,
Yeah.
like both from an ads and standpoint. And we do it and we practice what we preach. We do a lot of this ourselves. I mean, this is, one of the ways we've gotten to where we are. We've been running Google ads for ourselves since the beginning. We've been doing SEO since the beginning. Facebook ads we've done on and off. We just off ever because we just are so busy. You know how it is. Like you have less time to market yourself than you do your clients. But
Oh, it's always the way. Like, I mean,
yeah,
I think Jeff doesn't even have an agency website. Like his ads just go to a Calendly link. And he's like, if his clients ask, "Where's your website?" He's like, "Why? I don't need it." Like I'm one person, man. I like that you guys eat your own food. I remember when I was first starting out. I think it was like 19 or 20s, right around the same time. I like got like bamboozled by my first client by undercharging. But I ran these Facebook ads to get clients in, and my pitch was if the moment they opted in to like the email newsletter, there was a video. And at the time, almost no one was doing this. This is like back in 2009, 2010. And so, why should you listen to me? Like, well, I'm the only marketing agency that's not cold calling you. I'm using marketing. So that's like one positive thing, which actually worked really well, but I still had no idea what I was doing on the back end. So of course, like my clients churn. I got all these like really random businesses I didn't know how to target right. But yeah, I like that. Speaking of that, so with your insight into agencies, I imagine you'd have some clarity on how other agencies are doing their actual client acquisition. So a lot of your agencies all just like word of mouth how they're growing, or do they have any kind of formalized acquisition channels themselves? Like what are you seeing out there in the landscape?
Kind of all over the place. And of course, again, depends on what they do. We have like some of the larger agencies, of course, some of these guys are very robust. They have huge sales teams, they have huge pipelines, and they put a lot of money and resources into building those out. We have some that are just so niche down that it's like they're just the de facto expert in that industry. And I feel like it's a lot easier for them to reach those people with basic things like, a lot of guys are doing basic ads and things like that, running people to webinars. Like webinars, that used to be like considered an outdated tactic, but we see a lot of agency owners crushing it still, doing a monthly webinar, running ads to that webinar to get people to sign up, and then, becoming the expert. And then, depending on too, like how they build their agency, like, so we kind of talked a little bit, Greg, offline about Josh Nelson with Seven Figure Agency.
Yep.
His training program for agency owners is top notch. I don't think there's a better one out there. And he teaches people to do all that stuff. Like, hey, you want to grow to a 7-figure agency? Here's the roadmap. And he actually did it and does it and lives it, because he has his own agency in the plumbing space that does like 5 million a year in revenue. And so he says, take my slides, edit them with your logo, run the webinar, get the leads, and grow your agency. And he does that. He's very transparent that way. If you sign up to his program, he's like, here's a template for writing your own book for your industry. It's all over the place. Like guys are doing SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads. Some guys do direct mailing still. They get like association lists depending on what industry you're in. And then speaking at events and trade shows is popular. Writing a book is something really good too. People are searching for that. So it's kind of all over the place, to be quite honest. But some of these guys just have it so dialed in. We're seeing just, tremendous upward growth because they're hitting on all cylinders. So
Is there any common characteristic that you're seeing for these agencies that are just like crushing it? Like what are the common traits that they all have?
I would say they're mostly niche focused. So that's obviously critical, because I think it's easier to stand out, when you're an expert in painting contractors or an expert in chiropractic marketing or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And they have their stuff dialed in though, meaning they have good branding, they have a good offer, and they have experience or results in that industry. And then they're confident. And so they're able to push through these different channels and kind of have that speak through. I feel like there's such a lack of follow up and a lack of proactive work being done that the agencies that put the work in, it's just easy for them to stand out. Kind of like how we've done with Agency Elevation. You go to our website, it's very transparent and open, and we tell you everything up front. And then when you start the process, like if you were to submit an email, like you get a response within minutes. Like we're on top of it. You know what I mean? And it's like that's what I'm seeing. Like the agencies that are crushing it, they're into this. They're on top of it and they're pushing the envelope every single day. We have agencies where, like, you mentioned it earlier, that digital nomad life. If you want to build an agency and you only want to work an hour a day, absolutely, we have clients that do that. And they just kind of maintain, they sit at 15, 20 clients, and that's fine because that's the lifestyle they want. But the agency owners who are growing to hundreds of accounts and millions of dollars in revenue, they're pounding the pavement in all areas just every day, right? They do SEO, cold emails, cold calling, they have call centers, they have teams, they do direct mail, newsletters, trade shows, so they're just kind of hitting it on all fronts. It just depends on how aggressive you want to get.
Yeah,
I
I
would
love
just
that.
add that
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
there's a big difference between how the top agencies report and how the other ones do that aren't as successful. So the ones that aren't as successful are just reporting. I mean, for SEO, maybe I don't even, God knows what they're reporting on some of them, but for ads, like we
Backlink on
see a lot of,
Forbes.
yeah, for ads, we see a lot of like, just, you got 40 leads on Facebook last month. It's like, that's it. You got 25 conversions on Google ads. What does that mean to the client? So the top agencies that we partner with have, like, they go a lot deeper than that. So they're not just reporting, delivering leads and conversions, they're actually delivering ROI and dollar amounts, like dollar amounts of actual
Mhm.
business being driven to these businesses via the leads. As such, they have access to what happens to the leads. So like they're tapping into their client CRMs, like they're just understanding the full picture from A to Z. And not only even with what happens with the leads themselves, but thinking outside the box, like, well, with the leads themselves, like customer lifetime value, referral value, if it's type of business that people talk about and tell others to go check out. So just capturing all that and coming to meetings with their clients, being able to present everything in that same vein, attribution, which has gotten more complicated in recent years with iOS 14 and other nuances. So the best agencies have the right tools in place to make sure that they're not missing anything as it relates to what's coming in. David kind of alluded to this, but omnichannel offerings. So not being a I mean, there are exceptions to this, right? Like we have huge agencies that are only selling one service, but I mean, obviously, mathematically, to get as big as possible or do as well as possible, you're going to have more than one service. Not only revenue generation, but for risk diversification. If one of these services goes belly up, you don't want to be out of business. So we see the best agencies doing all of them. And we might have covered this earlier, but we've had many who start off. Well, David actually mentioned this with one. Many start off with one agency, and then with us, because they're able to get all this under one roof, they branch out into other things and get huge into SEO or Google Ads or Facebook or wherever they didn't start out. So yeah, everything David mentioned, the reporting, the attribution, omni-channel type offerings. Yeah, that would be it. The interesting thing is like David mentioned like niche focus. That he's absolutely right. That's the best way to scale and get to a large size. What's interesting though is like the very largest usually aren't in a niche. So if you look at the largest agencies in the world, none of them are in a niche. But, you know, optimistic as we are, is that realistic for the average agency owner to become, a Razorfish or a Merkle or something? Maybe not. But general agencies work well too. I mean, you're not limited in any way, but it is harder to scale.
Yeah, I would think it kind of would work like a traditional niche affiliate website, right? If you're talking about microwaves, it might be best off like, all right, let's do this whole topical map, everything about microwaves. But then as you get that down, you're expanding to like other kitchen products, and soon you're like a kitchen magazine, like a digital magazine about kitchens, right? I would think that would be the natural growth step to that, but maybe you guys have a better insight into that.
I think, the niche focus is just easier to stand out from those in the industry, right? So, like, you know, I can create an agency called, painting contractor or, painter marketing agency, right?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, with good branding, if you're a painting contractor, it's very easy to think that, wow, these guys specialize in painting contractors. So that's all they do, that's all they know. If you're general focused, how do you stand out? You really can't. It's just, hey, we do marketing, right? And we service everybody. So it's much harder to stand out in that case. And I think it's hard to pivot from niche focus to general. So I feel like it's one or the other track. Like if you're going to grow a general agency, you got to just like have a different sales approach than the niche focus. I think the niche focus is easier to scale because you can get instant credibility with just good branding. And so it's easier to kind of stand out and get people interested, right? So it's like, I don't even want to compare the two because Eric's exactly right, though. I think niche focus is the easiest to scale, but I don't know any niche agencies that are doing 20, $30 million, a year or hundreds of millions, like you get like Merkle or you get Scorpion or, Reach Local, which I forget what they're called now, something else. But it's like those guys are kind of like outliers. But yeah, all the very large agencies that are 50 million plus, they're all general, but there's so many agencies niche focused, and we see guys going from zero to multiple seven figures in 3-4 years, like in these different agency groups because they're niche focused. So it's pretty incredible to see that kind of growth too.
One
Yeah, that
thing too
makes
to keep in
sense.
mind for anyone listening who's like starting out or thinking about these things, about like what to get into, you can think outside the box too with like what a niche is. People usually think industries and verticals. Sometimes it's even location, assuming you're in a big enough market. Like for example, let's say you live in New York City, right? Millions of businesses and people live there. And maybe you have a lot of connections in New York City for some reason. You're well known, you have a lot of friends, whatever the case may be. That could be your niche. You're the best New York City marketing agency. And you could run that up to millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue. So that's an instance where like you can do a general agency, but you have a niche. It's just that you're in New York City, and that's all over your website, right? Number one New York City marketing agency, all that. So there's a lot of ways you can go about it, but yeah, it's like David said, it's you need to start somewhere. You can't just maybe some have done this, and I'm sure they have, but yeah, it's hard to be sitting in your basement, calling businesses all across the country randomly, haphazardly, hoping they'll sign up with you when you have no common ground with them whatsoever. So, and back to the niche thing, we can talk about this a lot because it's really important for how to get up off the ground. And probably obvious, but we see too, or I see at least a lot of instances where people just spend so much time trying to find the perfect niche. Like they'll spend months like looking through lists. Well, we get questions a lot from this, even through our, leads that come in, have no clients. Like, what industry is the best? What's the least competitive? What do you get the best results in? It's like, you can get results in any of them. I think you really should look at, back to what we've been discussing, how are you going to get somebody to answer the phone if you call or an email? So in my New York City example, what if your wife is a dentist? Maybe dental's great for you because you can leverage your wife. You can speak the language of dentists, right? My wife's a dentist. Like you just have some commonality, I feel like, to get up off the ground, or it's going to be a heavy lift. If you were a real estate agent 10 years ago, do that. Start an agency for real estate agents. You can speak their language because you used to be one. I wouldn't just pick something off a list that sounds sexy or fun. Again, people do that. You're going to make it a longer road for yourself.
Personally, from my experience in SEO, I prefer boring, and like so boring that no one even thinks about it. I see David smiling over. The riches of the niches with SEO, right? But yeah, that makes total sense. I want to pivot a little bit since we only have a little bit of time to talk more about the intricacies of how you guys have built the business, because you don't really have a white label solution to fall back onto, right? You're scaling the business as needed. So in a service business, which I'm intimately familiar with, like it's so easy to overhire or like underhire, where everyone has their hair on fire, where at one moment it's a desert, the other moment it's just like this thunderstorm, and there often seems no in between. So how do you guys scale yourselves? Like what's your kind of SOP for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a tough question because it's something we've been trying to figure out for years and years. And there is no perfect balance, because what will happen is we could have the perfect resources right now where things are just smooth and great. And all of a sudden, a lead could come in through the website, and in 3 weeks, we're taking on 300 accounts, right?
Right.
So for us, we're always hiring, and we always have people who are training and are ready with open workloads. So it's unfortunate from, ideally we'd love to say, no, we just run super tight, but you can't. We got to have some availability because there's onboards coming in every single day. There's new leads coming in that are going to be new agencies. Some can be bigger, some can be smaller. And so we've just kind of had to strike that balance of, now we just kind of like, it's kind of weird, but we get like a feeling. And it's like, even our leadership team, they're like, hey guys, we're starting to get where we have, 4 or 5 people with 70%, of availability taken. So we have room, but we're just getting tight. Now is the time to hire. And we just we go off of that. Like they kind of do a stress test on their teams, and then they let us know when it's time to hire. And then we get people in, and we, put them through our training and our processes and get them siloed off into their special area.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time. You have to start in the very beginning. You have to have some real horses because you're not going to have the money to hire proactively really either. So it's critical to start out. I mean, even like David and I have pounded the pavement. We still do. We're still in the trenches doing all. I mean, we're hands on, but you have to work at the beginning. There's going to be instances where you have one employee doing the job of two, right? I think any successful business started out that way. And then, like you said, as you get bigger and get more money, you can start to more proactively hire. Now, though, it's like an aircraft carrier where you have like some fighter jets. They're just on the aircraft carrier, in case somebody gets gunned down, like they're going up. We have some that are just sitting on the aircraft carrier, right? They don't have any accounts. They're just sitting there. So got to be ready. Best
I,
analogy
I,
I
I
can give.
I think that's smart. When it comes to the actual organization, how do you guys organize the team? Like, do you have pods of people who do every service and a manager sitting above them, or each in their own lane? Like, how do you structure the org?
That's
Yeah,
just
we
like I
have,
mentioned earlier, where it's okay, Dave.
I was just going to say, we have kind of have a team structure. So it's like we have specialists, senior specialists, and then we have managers, senior managers, and then we have directors. So the director is like our senior leadership, where they're not really supposed to be in the trenches, although sometimes they are because they're heavily involved in whatever clients need. And then their managers are underneath them to support and kind of make sure that the overall team's good. And then the end specialist is there underneath a manager or multiple managers, depending on how big that team is. And so we just do like meetings and pulse checks and things like that, and they check in and then they let us know, and then it gets escalated. And so as we've grown, we've added layers. Back in the beginning, it was just Eric and I and specialists, because him and I were the managers and the directors and the owners and the sales
The
team
sales
and
guy and
everything,
the
right?
market. Yeah.
Yeah, you're everything. We wore every hat. And then we got big enough where we're like, hey, we actually need a manager for each team. And then, hey, we need 2 managers for each team. Well, hey, now we need a director for overseeing all the managers and teams. And so we've just added layers and layers over the years. And now that we're at 100 employees, or going to cross that very soon, yeah, we have a lot more layers than we had 3-4 years ago, right? So our layers now are much deeper, much more robust, and so we have a lot more support there. But when you start out, it's like Eric said, you need workhorses, you need people who, my favorite word is, are you a grinder? I even ask people in the hiring phase, are you comfortable grinding during business hours? And if they tell me no, it's not a good fit. We're a grindy company during business hours, like we get stuff done, right? So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. Eric might have something to add.
No, that's it. I agree.
The
We're
the
up on
grinding.
time, so I won't go
Yeah.
on.
So I'll let you guys go with the grindy thing. Like I have friends who they hire, they always ask, "Do you play any video games?" They're like, "Oh yeah, I play StarCraft." Like perfect. Like any of those MMOs where people grinding out. But my
Yeah,
final question for you guys, I'll let you guys go. If you could give one piece of advice for an agency owner who's looking to grow and scale, what would it be?
it's a good question. Pick a niche. For starters, probably go niche focused if you're looking to start and grow, and don't get sucked into the trap of offering guarantees to get sales. That's the quickest way we've seen agencies go bankrupt very quickly, where they do some training program, some guru tells them to offer some crazy guarantee of 500 leads in 5 days, and they sign up people and they get all excited and they can't fulfill on it, and then the agency just kind of implodes quickly. But I'll let Eric add to that what Eric thinks.
Yeah, I mean, so many suggestions we covered a few minutes ago. I think would be the one I mentioned would just be make sure you're able to really prove real value for what you're doing. If you can prove to a business that you're making them more money, in theory, they should never stop wanting to pay you. So make sure from day one you are able to provide reporting that can show that value. Don't just sell leads, don't just sell rankings. Make sure you're going deeper than that.
Love it. Well, I know you guys got to run, but hopefully we get to do some more content down the road. I really like what you guys are doing. So congrats. I think you guys have positioned yourself really well. If someone wanted to follow either of you or pick your brain or just get in touch with the agency, what's the best place for them to connect?
Yeah, so through our website, agencyelevation.com, don't hesitate to send us a form through there, a contact form. Just let us know whatever questions or anything you have. You can also find us, on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that. So you can add me there, just David Kauzlaric. I'm happy to add you. And if you have any questions or just want to bounce stuff off of us, just reach out to us. We're widely available. So
Awesome. Well, I will put all those links in the show notes. And thank you for coming on, guys. I will have to do this again because I feel like I probably have dozens of more questions if we have more time. So,
Happy to.
yeah, looking forward to our next chat.
hey, thanks for having
Thank
us.
you,
We're
Greg.
glad to be here and really appreciate your time too.
Thank you. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.